Hello. So I'm going to keep this short but sweet. I promised Steven that I wouldn't run into his time. I'm Jack Nye. I'm with Athena Health. We have R&D office in Boston and another one in Austin where we're trying to save healthcare using Perl, actually. We've got like 8 million lines of Perl 5 code servicing 50,000 doctors. We do electronic medical records, practice management systems, data analysis, business intelligence. The main reason I'm here is to introduce Steven Little, who probably most of you know better than you know me, certainly. This is Steven tells me that this talk is a bit of an update or a follow-up on a talk he gave in Orlando, which is somewhat controversial. But he's in the interim worked on some new ideas and wants to share them with you. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. First things first, I forgot water, so if anybody wants to get me a water, I'll buy them a beer later on. Thank you. Yeah, I'll trade a water for a beer. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how parched I get. So, my talk is called Perl, the Detroit of Scripting Languages. Oh, why did it do that? There we go. Long time ago. Actually, it was only about 6 months ago, and it was actually in Orlando, which is only about 16 hours by car, 369 hours by foot, according to Google. There is no bus route, so, but that's actually not the point. So, in Orlando, I gave a talk called "Perl is not dead; it's a dead end." It kind of, why is it doing this? I hate Keynote. What is it doing? All right. So it kind of ignited a lot of discussion. Now, you should see a big giant flame here now, but Keynote's screwing up. And it got about 21,000 views on SpeakerDeck. I rated that talk R because it was OPW and it's pretty okay to curse and say bad things there. This is YAPC. We have a code of conduct. So this talk will actually be rated PG-13. Everything else still applies. It's a bunch of half-truths, baseless rumors, bald-faced lies, and any resemblance to reality is purely coincidental. So one of the things I talked about there was the Perl community. I also talked about the echo chamber that we all live in. I talked about Perl 5 porters and how they have a simultaneous fear of change combined with an intense love of bike shedding, and how this combination can, to some degree, lead to a culture of obstructionism. I also talked about our community's obsession with hanging on to the old ways of doing things and not willing to let these things go. Sawyer X gave a great presentation about this particular subject. I talked about our inability to move the language forward and our collective obsession with backwards compatibility. I also spoke about how CPAN is no longer the only game in town. Other languages like Ruby, Python, JavaScript, C#, Java, they're all very quickly catching up, both in module counts as well as sophisticated tooling support. We do still have the best tool chain, for sure. We've got CPANTs, we've got all that stuff you guys know. We have the Meta CPAN and the searchability that has on there, and all the API and what that can build off of that. But I want you all to keep in mind that it's only a matter of time before these other languages and these other communities catch up. Okay? They can see what we've done, copy it, learn from our mistakes, and move on. I also spoke about the kind of unfortunate hole that Perl 6 has to climb out of. You can see it right down there. I talk about the state of the Perl 5 core. It's been called Jenga several times today. This is one of the censored slides. By this point, you're probably asking why I'm being so negative. And Keynote screwed up again. Okay. So, right, not sure if trolling, maybe just an asshole meme, that's all. Anyway, so I want to assure you, though, that I said all this not because I hate Perl, not because I want Perl to die. I said it because I love Perl. And I want Perl to become, Perl 5 and Perl 6 to both become the awesome languages that I know they can. So at the end of that talk, I introduced a project of mine, pet project, I had to talk about it earlier, called Mo, which is what I'm calling an OFun prototype of, or an optimized for fun prototype of ultramodern Perl 5. And I essentially wanted a couple of things for Mo. It's the basic stuff, I won't go over too much. And this transition is going to fail, and that's really bad. So hold on one second. Let's see if this comes back again. Okay. My reasoning for doing this was because I wanted to create a new language, or I wanted to take the Perl 5 language and I wanted to move it forward. Okay? I wanted to make it, and actually, if we go back, this might look to you a lot like Perl 6. You might say, hey, wait a second, that's a lot of what Perl 6 has. Okay? I wanted to do this in Perl 5. Okay? I wanted to bring Perl 5 forward. Because I believe that Perl 6 is a space-age language. And let's see. Let's all see if Keynote works. No! So anyway, there's a picture of Larry there in space. This is going to be maybe a boring talk because these transitions are not working. Actually, hold on. Let's try one thing real quick. Sorry. Todd's going to kill me. Let's reopen Keynote. I'll just talk amongst yourselves. So let's see. No! All right. All right, I have no idea what happened. Yeah, we all hate Keynote. So anyway, all right. So my point there was, Perl 6 is a space-age language. It's a great language, okay? And we need to give it time to finish. We need give the Perl 6 developers the time to get it done. But in the meantime, Perl 5 doesn't have to just sit and wait, okay? So, now, that was the past. Let's get on with the talk here. Why did I choose Detroit? Partially it was because Todd pushed me for an abstract before I'd figured out what I wanted to talk about. But, you know, when I thought about it, you know, Perl and Detroit have some similarities. Detroit was once the center of crazy productivity, okay? Much like Perl, if we all remember back to the late 90s. But at some point, many of Detroit's big companies, they left, okay? Also, not entirely like Perl. Some of the companies have abandoned us. Maybe not abandoned us, but Detroit has also kind of started to rot from the inside, as you can see. Sort of like Perl, too, kind of. And lastly, there's actually a lot of people out there who are trying to make Detroit a better place, who are trying to revive Detroit. But you know what? Most people don't know that. Kind of like Perl, again. We're all of us in this room are trying to make Perl a better place, but it doesn't get outside of our echo chamber. So, you can think of this talk as part 2 of that talk that I gave in Orlando. What I want to sort of go over is talk about some of the insights that that talk brought and the ensuing discussion and what that all came to. So I also recently realized that the last talk I gave from the point of view of a programmer, in that my solution was mostly just more programming. But the fact of the matter is, and let's see if this transition doesn't mess up again. And it did. Hold on, I like this picture. I want to. But I realized that I actually don't do that much programming anymore, and because of that, this is going to be really bad if I have to do all my transitions manually. This is actually a picture of me drinking my lunch. I actually asked one of my minions to take the picture for me. I delegated. No. So I actually approached the Mo project as a project manager from the start. But I found that I eventually abandoned this approach because I got nothing done. I spent all day talking and kind of taking meetings with people and stuff like that, which might sound familiar to people who deal with project managers. But that said, I actually wanted to talk about some of the things that I discovered during that first phase and sort of the important problems that I found in the community that we really need to have a discussion about. And again, let's see if these transitions... God. We're going to do something different here. Okay? So... people started asking me or people started throwing in their 2 cents and giving me a lot of opinions about what they would like to see in Perl. Okay.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. Exactly. So, there was things like getting rid of autoload. I want real threads. I want context. I don't want one array. I want UTF by default everywhere. Please include that mop thing that you were working on before. Fix smart matching. Remove auto or indirect syntax. All that kind of stuff like that. And you guys get to see all my speaker notes too. I can hear myself echoing. That's weird. So one of the things, though, that came out of this was that the most common request was, please implement some portion of CPAN. Okay, and this is sort of the crux of this talk here. People said, well, maybe just Perl, pure Perl parts, perhaps some arbitrary percentage, 80 or 90, whatever, something like that. And so I actually took that as a challenge at first, and I decided to go start looking and see what sort of that would entail. This actually comes up on the other side, but Keynote's going to screw it up, so let's forget about it. That slide, though, speaks for itself. It was not a pretty time looking at all that stuff. And it turns out that some of the stuff that I found in the Perl 5 core that I thought was a problem, the fetish for backwards compatibility, and all that kind of stuff like that, it wasn't really isolated to Perl 5, or the Perl 5 core. It was also a problem in CPAN, okay? And it's multiplied by the 27,000 modules that we actually have out on CPAN, okay? Or whatever the current module count is. If you look at the list of features that I showed before, some that people wanted to add, some that people wanted to take away, some that people wanted to fix, and then pick a module. Pick any module at random, and if that module itself doesn't either use or abuse those features, then I'll bet you that in that module's dependency chain is a module that also uses and abuses those features, okay? And if it doesn't do any of that, it's probably an Acme module and it's not that useful, okay? We are tied, not only is DarkPan tied to this long backwards compatibility, okay? DarkPan being the great unwashed mass of Perl code that exists out there that we don't know exactly what it is and what it does and what it uses. But not only is that tied to the backwards compatibility, and can we risk breaking it by trying to change the Perl 5 core, but also CPAN itself is linked to that and can very easily be broken for the same thing. For instance, test more, okay? Test more is commonly thought of as, or is commonly acknowledged to be one of the modules that if you upload a broken test more, it will break CPAN. I'm not going to hit the slide advance, but there would be some numbers there. According to MetaCPAN, 12,741 modules depend directly on test more. So you're guaranteed to break 12,741 modules. I think that number is totally off. I'm sure it's much higher. Okay. If you go looking in test more, it's actually not that bad of a code base, but it does have some really ugly corners in it. Okay. And I picked this not just because it's got the ugly corners in it, and it's an older module, and it's been around since probably about 2000 or so, or something like that. But I pick it because it's actively being developed. Okay. This is not something that's been sitting around and rotting. This is well-tended code. It just happens to be tied to a language that has to maintain this old sort of rotting backward compatibility. And actually, it's all, I mean, subroutine prototypes, strict refs, or non-strict refs, all sorts of stuff like that. To make matters worse, xutils makemaker, okay? If you've looked at the guts of this, that is definitely ugly, okay? Testmore's got a few ugly bits, but xutils makemaker has got some horrors inside it, okay? According to MetaCPAN, 10,305 modules depend upon it. Again, I think that's got to be totally wrong, because it's got to be a much higher count, okay? So the point is that if you start to change the core of Perl, you start to break some of our core tool chain and some of the core modules that we all depend upon, okay? And I don't mean to pick on Schwern, but since he's not here, why not? No, honestly, just kidding. He'll find me. He's still in Austin, so. No, he's dedicated a ton of time over the years to make these two modules do what they do, okay? And the bad programming that's within them is not there because Shorn's a bad programmer. On the contrary, it's there because of some of the weird edge cases he has to support, some of the old platforms he has to support. Again, that same issue that we have in the backwards, or in the Perl 5 core, and the problem with backwards compatibility, we also have in our core modules, the bedrocks of CPAN. So where does that leave us? We're stuck between a rock and a hard place here, okay? The rock being the 25-year commitment to backwards compatibility in the Perl 5 core, and the hard place being the millions of lines of code on CPAN which depend upon that commitment, okay? Both of these drive up the cost of adding new features. Now let's see if Keynote's bullet points work. And they don't. So, all right, I'm going to read those slides. The cost of adding new features, what is the cost of adding new features, okay? The cost of adding new features is the possibility of slowing down the runtime or the execution time, right? It's the possibility of getting it wrong again, okay? We got it wrong with some of the smart matching stuff, and we're having trouble bringing that out. So that also that begs the question, what is the cost of removing old and broken features? Now, I know we have removed some of them in the past, but it's a very difficult procedure. It's very hard to do, okay? So this begs the question, what is the cost of our commitment, our 25-year commitment to backwards compatibility, okay? We are stuck as a language, we're not evolving. Monkey slide. So, you see, I believe that something happened in 2000. John Orwant threw that cup. Chip Salzenberg stopped writing Topaz. Larry started taking RFCs from everybody. And the development of Perl 6 began, okay? It was our future. But at that point, Perl 5 kind of stopped, okay? Meanwhile, Larry has become the Dave Bowman of programming language design. He's going beyond the stars, okay? Him and the other Sixers, they're out there exploring time and space, having a grand old time, and doing brilliant work. But meanwhile, I'm glad I didn't have a transition here because I like this picture. Meanwhile, those of us still using Perl 5 have to listen to stupid FUD. We have to listen to people saying Perl is a write-only language, Perl is unmaintainable line noise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all know that's not true. But, that said, some of the remaining criticisms are actually valid. Because Perl 5 kind of stopped evolving at that point, okay? Our lack of a proper OO system. Sure, it was really cool, really clever back in the day, but we need something updated. Our lack of mainstream IDE support. Now, I know probably we could start a whole holy war between VI and Emacs, but the reality is if you've ever actually really used an IDE that really was nicely supported by the language, you know that it's a nice thing to have, okay? And we don't have that. We have Padre, it's getting there, but it's not there all the way. We have confusing sigils, references, stuff that's hard to teach people originally. I mean, the list could go on and on. We all know these warts because we live with them every day. And I believe that these things are actually the reason why people don't believe that you can build large-scale systems with Perl anymore. The common belief outside of the echo chamber, okay? Not us, all in here. We all know that it's true because we probably either maintain one or have built one or something like that. But people outside there, they don't believe that it's possible. And I think that's why people really say, they say to you, do you really, you use Perl? What do you do with it, okay? You know, people don't know how cool we have it in here and what we've got. And part of the problem is that, you know, no amount of marketing, oh, wait, sorry, wrong slide. This marketing, no amount of marketing, thank you. No amount of marketing is going to fix this because we don't have something that people want. We have the same old Perl, okay? No matter how cool our mooses are, our dancers, our mojolicious, whatever plural mojolicious is, deep down we're still Perl, okay? You can still use formats, you can still check Unix group membership, you can still run your Perl 1 script, okay? So we've got nothing to sell to the outside world. So no amount of marketing is going to do that. And even CPAN, our most popular go-to reason for still using Perl, we're suffering from the same fate. We have that same backwards compatibility issue. Now you might ask, what's wrong with this? Okay? Perl's always been a language about getting things done. No matter how sloppy, dirty, ugly, it didn't matter. All that mattered was that it worked. Perl is also a glue language. You like that one? I'll sell t-shirts of this later on. Perl can be used to bind lots of things together. It's actually one of the things that it's really, 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 really good at. Okay, stringing Unix commands together on the command or in shell scripts, binding C libraries, building large projects in other languages, binding systems, to networks of systems, to networks of networks of systems. Okay, Perl can glue the whole thing together. And who cares what that sticky, messy stuff in between looks like? It doesn't have to be clean. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just gets it done. And you know what? Some of those systems too, and I bet, go put your ATM card in an ATM, get money out, and I'll bet you at some point that transaction will touch some Perl code, because Perl's used pretty heavily in the financial industry. Now, granted, it went through a whole crap ton of COBOL code first, but it also probably touched some Perl code, okay? And some of those financial systems, if they were to slow down for just 1 second of time, people could be losing lots and lots of money. Okay, they depend upon a certain execution window to get certain data here and certain data there, and doing what Perl is really good at. But those scripts have stopped. They're not being developed anymore. They're just being maintained. They're not clean. They're not well factored. Just that it works. That's all that matters again. So while out in the echo chamber they might not believe this, Perl runs a lot of the world. Perl is everywhere. Okay, if you look at job posts for Perl is, or if you just search for Perl on a job posting site, you'll find Perl in there. It might be the last thing on the list, and it might be just because they need you to be able to hack the build script or something like that, or fiddle with the servers or something like that. Perl's everywhere, okay, and we know that, but those people outside the echo chamber don't. Okay, now is this a reason that we should stop Perl 5 from evolving? Should we just say, okay, hey, that's great, that's fine, you know, what's wrong with this? You know, it's fine if you don't mind Perl becoming the next COBOL. So actually, it crosses COBOL out and then Perl appears. So I'm going to talk you through all the keynote transitions. Okay. I'm going to not use Keynote next year. Yes, another round for apple sucking. But you know, there's nothing wrong with this because there's a lot of money to be made in maintaining legacy code. Okay. That's maybe not what all of us want to do. There's also a lot of money to be made in trying to upgrade code. Okay, you can maybe upgrade to Moose or your web application to Plack or geez, what's other new stuff that's out there? You know, going from forking into an event-based model or something like that. You could try and do all that. There's money to be made in it, but some of us want to build new stuff in Perl 5. Some of us want to play with things in languages that we see in other languages that we want to be able to do in Perl. And we don't want to be shackled to the past. Okay, we don't want to have to worry about whether somebody can run their Perl 1 script in the same runtime. So wouldn't it be awesome if we had something like subroutine signatures? I don't know how many of you are familiar with Fortran. They've got subroutine signatures. COBOL also got subroutine signatures. Lisp, and these are the 3 oldest programming languages out there, well, high-level programming languages out there. They all have subroutine signatures, and they've all had them from sometime within the 60s or the 70s, okay? Now, that's not to say that the @ and all that isn't useful. I've done a lot of really interesting, and I know Matt Trout's done a lot of very evil things with this, okay? But ultimately, it would be nice to just have something as simple as subroutine signatures. And the kind of sad fact is it's 2013 and we're actually still debating it. I think, Rick, can you back me up on this? Have you accepted it as a feature?
It's not done, but yeah, it's going to happen.
It's not done, but it's going to happen, so. But it's taken us till now. Oh, I'm sorry, Rick, it was your fault? Rick said we were waiting for him, so he'll take the blame. He'll buy beers too. Well, ultimately, it's all your fault, right, Larry? So, but don't take it too hard. We still love you. You know, this is what we have now, which can get weird. And this is also, again, this is one of the things too that I think this is hard to teach new programmers too. So when you bring them into Perl and you say, well, yeah, you have to unpack your own arguments, and well, actually, the defined OR will only work in 5.10. So if you're stuck in 5.6, too bad. And then what's that? Why do you have all that? What's the line noise? That's dereferencing syntax. You have to. What?
Those curlies are unnecessary.
Okay. They're there for effect. I know they're unnecessary. Okay, and now you might say to yourself, well, we could do this all without array references. Sure. Well, that's Tim Toady. Okay, which, as we all know, has a dark side as well. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a proper class system? Larry has already been nice enough to design one for us that we can just copy. Instead, we have this. Okay, now, this is blessed references, subroutines and packages that masquerade as methods. Magic is a variables filled with strings that should potentially, hopefully, map back to a package name, and that's how we do inheritance. Okay, this is weird. It's hard enough to teach a new student OO programming. Now you have to teach them all the weird things that we jumped through. Now, in 1995, when Larry created this, it was actually very clever and it was very useful. But a lot of thinking and a lot of work has gone into sort of stabilizing OO in a conceptual way, and we've unfortunately not kept up.
The quotes are not necessary.
Again, for effect. I'm a showman. Also, exceptions. Ooh, wouldn't we all love to have real exceptions? Instead, we have to do this. And actually, that doesn't handle all the edge cases. Okay, what this doesn't handle is it won't handle overloaded objects, the possibility of $@ being false, and I'm sure 5 or 6 other things that I don't even know about. Okay, you're obviously not going to put this in your code. Now, fortunately, we have try-tiny, which hopefully every one of you uses if you ever do anything with exceptions and catching them. Okay, but unfortunately, try-tiny only solved half the problem. Try-tiny solved the try-catch block. Okay, it didn't solve the exceptions on the other side, because you have to have a proper, well-structured exception system to go along with your exception catching. We still have the millions of possibilities, the Tim Toady out on CPAN for that. Wouldn't it also be nice to have threads? Liz, this is for you. Threads. Not iThreads, but real threads, okay? And now, granted, this is a theoretical thing I just threw up based on some Java examples. I'm sure it has race conditions and various other issues, no doubt. But wouldn't it be just nice to have real threads? Instead, we have this, which is really weird. If anybody knows about iThreads out there, you know just the horror that awaits you when you try and use them. And actually I copied this out of the thread queue module, and I just sort of trimmed it down for the slide. There's a good chance that this will actually segfault and delete your entire music directory, just out of spite. I'm not sure. Okay? But even that, let's forget about threads even for a second, okay? Because most of the rest of the world seems to have done that, okay? A lot of everybody else is moving on to newer forms of concurrency, okay? And threads are really just a throwback to the late 90s. My personal favorite is the actor system. So if you've looked at Scala at all, if you've looked at Erlang at all, actually if you happen to program at the Defense Department in the late 90s and used real-time ADA tasks, this kind of stuff will be familiar to you, okay? Actors are essentially a loop waiting for messages, okay? There's a share-nothing approach, so you reduce a whole case of deadlocks and race conditions and stuff like that, and you basically just respond to messages that come in. So this is a base example borrowed from the Scala example. This is the other side of it, okay? And this is the concept of actors actually has been around for a long time. Like I said, the ATA 95 task system is very similar to this. Chances are the nuclear missile that might kill us all actually has that code running inside it, okay, using the actor system. The Erlang language, which was actually released in 1989, okay, there's some people in here who I'm pretty sure were still in diapers in 1989. I think one of my coworkers right over there, yeah. Okay, that in 1989, Erlang was released from the lab and has been used in production, and it runs the Ericsson phone system and a soft real-time system, okay, that's very robust and works really well. And they don't run into some of the common multi-programming issues. And actually, the thing that I really like about actors is that Actors means that you never really have to care how your concurrency is implemented under the hood, okay? Meaning that if you just change, and so everybody can understand this example. We create a pong, we create a ping new. We say we want to ping them for 100,000 times because we're just being a troll, and then we tell them that the pong, which the sender is over there. We start both of them, and then they run. Well, in theory, actors, if you just start to add in a little bit more information, and before you say it, Chip, yes, I should have quoted those IP addresses. So. Yeah, it's a V string. Thank you. So just by telling this and doing it on another machine, wow! Suddenly your code that was running there for the actors, they're distributed objects across the network. Okay, this is sort of the beauty of actors. Unfortunately, in Perl 5, I can't even give you an equivalent here. Now, some of you might say, well, wait a second, we've got Poe, we've got all that. Well, we've been doing this event-based concurrency, which has some it's somewhat related. The two best ones out there, one was voted the best module of the year in 1999, and the other one actually released a version not that long ago which died if there was another module in your ink that the author didn't like. Okay, so while we have the ability to potentially do this, we don't really have a good stable alternatives right now. Well, actually not. Poe's pretty stable. But anyway, point is, we don't really have a foundation out there for this kind of multi-programming. And multi-programming is one of the key things out there that is driving a lot of some of these newer languages, the ability to do multi-threading. Because how many people here have more than one core in the phone or the laptop or the tablet that's sitting on their lap right now? Okay? Yeah. You know what? Perl only uses one of them. Okay? And most every other language only uses one of them. Okay? Until you have threads and stuff like that, you're not going to get that. So we are not taking advantage of all these new cores. So, I like this Larry quote. I've used it like 3 times. This quote, and I talked to Larry when I last used this at YAPC EU. What he really wanted to do was make sure that there was a number of different possibilities going on in Perl 4. There was Aura Perl. There was all sort of these. I don't know if you really call them forks, but Larry saw a divergence in the communities, and he wanted to bring them back. And so the goal with the Perl 5 module system, and ultimately CPAN builds upon this, is to really encourage everybody to come together and for all of us to use one another's work and create a culture of reusability. Okay, and again, I spent a lot of time, as I said earlier, looking at other languages and looking at other modules that they had and their equivalents to CPAN. Perl, far and away, has more interdependencies. Now, some of you might think that's a bad thing, but I think that's a good thing. That means that we're all working together and that we're all putting together a better platform so that we can all continue to build on top of that. Okay, so I think this was basically, Larry, you succeeded in this one, okay? This also has been used to justify, by myself, as well as others, the idea that when we're adding stuff to the Perl 5 core, we should first put it out on CPAN, okay? I recently discovered with my work with the P5 mop work that while this approach works to a certain degree, it ultimately adds more complexity to the Perl 5 core, and you still end up having to make some ugly compromises in order to get a really true, seamless, native feel to your language on there. Which brings me to the next quote. So, Perl was always designed to be an evolving language, okay? And I believe right now that we are at an evolutionary crossroads with Perl. So, now, I've basically crapped all over Perl now. So you might say, hey man, come on, what do you've got this problem, what do you think we're going to do about this? What can we do about this? What is the solution? Okay? Everything I said in Orlando still holds true. I believe now more than ever that over the 6 months of diving into Perl 5, diving into Perl 6, diving into CPAN, okay, it's still there. We have this problem, all right? I'm going to illustrate this curve, this again. So this went from here, it went from down in the corner all the way up to the top right there, and then just went over to the side. Okay, so it was a Perl 5 learning right angle, not a learning curve. So anyway, these jokes aren't as funny without the slides. But so this is actually a serious problem because the two current maintainers, or the two ones who are currently being paid by the P5 or the TPF, Nick Clark and Dave Mitchell, are probably the only two human beings on the planet, okay, capable of understanding a sizable portion of the Perl 5 core. Everyone else after that has their little pet peeves in their little corners. Thank you, Jeff. And so the issue comes down to, what do we do to solve this? The real problem is that small changes, even small changes, are going to break some stuff. Even if it only, the only possible exception is isolated subsystems like the regex system, but there's really only probably the regex system that's isolated. And also, too, I don't know how many of you have ever looked at the Perl 5 core test suite. That's the facial expression you'll have after you do, okay? It's a horror to behold. And it's a mess, okay? So how can we make significant improvements with a system, with a code base that is got a messy test suite, and has messy internals that only a few people understand? Sure, we have the smoke testers and all that kind of stuff like that. Those will be fine for little things like the hash randomization change and stuff like that, but if big major features, they're not going to get caught by the smoke testers. So we can't break our 25-year commitment to backwards compatibility. We just can't. But the thing is, it's not the core. It's also CPAN. We've got that same problem in there. So the question is Perl 6 our only hope? I respectfully disagree. Perl 6 declared a while ago that it's a sister language. It's no longer a successor to Perl 5. It's a sister language. This tells me that it's okay for us to start pushing Perl 5 forward again. Okay? We can start evolving the language more. We don't need to wait around. Now, so the question, is Mo, my project, the answer? No. I'll tell you right now. Mo is, and damn these transitions, Mo is a thought experiment, optimized for fun. It all started because I wanted to add a mop to the core of Perl 5. I wanted to bring Moose into the core of Perl 5, and it was actually easier to write a new language than it was to do that. So I want to be sure I make sure everybody knows Mo is an attempt to show a way forward. I want to do like what Pugs did, which was to try and help Larry and the Perl 6 designers feel out the language, where they wanted it to go. I'm trying to do the same thing with Mo. But Mo's not the only thing, okay? Rennie Urban has a project called P2. Okay, I don't know how many of you know it. Woohoo! It's based on a VM platform written by a Ruby guy. We won't hold that against Rennie. It's okay. The goal is a new runtime that can parse almost all of Perl 5 and potentially a little bit of XS. Okay, so he's actually targeting some backwards compatibility there. But he also wants to add new things to it. He wants to add constants. He wants to add some type checking at compile time. He wants to add methods and classes as well. He wants to add size arrays, okay, so they won't ever auto-vivify larger than they are. You can do a lot of compiler optimization around that. He wants to add a no magic directive, which means it'll take away all that crazy magic stuff that sometimes bites you in the ass. Okay, but the nice thing about that is within that block, he can also be aggressively optimizing within there because he doesn't have to account for some of the magic. There's also Perlito, okay? Perlito compiles Perl 5 to Perl 5, Perl 6 to Perl 5, Perl 5 to Common Lisp, Perl 5 to Go, Perl 5 to JavaScript, Perl 6 to JavaScript, Perl 6 to Perl 5, Perl 5, everything imaginable, okay? Flavio Glock is the author of it. It's a research project that he's doing, and he's calling it a compiler collection that implements a subset of Perl 5 and Perl 6, okay? And he's basically showing that look at all these possibilities that we can do. Look at all this stuff that we can do. And actually, and I saw too, Liz, you mentioned in your talk, there was recent commits for an x64 assembly language backend. So you compile your Perl 5 or Perl 6, one or the other, to x64 assembly language, which would be pretty cool. There's also gperl. Gperl is written by a Japanese guy whose name I'm not going to butcher on stage here. His handle is Gocci, G-O-C-C-Y. The GitHub description indicates that he wants to really make it fast. It seems to be written almost entirely in C++. For all we know, this is Chip's grandchild or something like that. Who knows? Long lost brother or something. It's like Topaz 2.0 or something. But more importantly, or more interestingly, actually with this project, he's releasing modules, okay? Go on CPAN and look at compiler :lexer, okay? As best I can tell, he's taken a chunk of gperl, which is just the lexer, and released it out on CPAN and put a Perl front interface to it. So you can actually lexically analyze your Perl code and then look at it in Perl. Now, I don't know if he has the full Perl 5 language implemented, but he's definitely got a pretty sizable subset. He also has on GitHub compiler :parser, okay, which produces an AST of Perl code. All right, we'll see when it's released exactly, but both of those things are very intriguing. There's also Perl 5i. So again, a shout out to Michael Schwern here. Okay, Perl 5i, I kind of call his approach right now the kitchen sink of language design, or the kitchen sink approach of language design. He's basically taken a whole bunch of really cool CPAN modules that change both the oh boy, I don't remember all the things. He's got auto die, all that kind of stuff like that. There's also NQP. Recently there was a Perl reunification summit that Wendy and Liz helped organize. And it was held in Perl, Germany. Who thought there was a Perl, Germany? And during that summit, Larry revised a project, which, if the transitions worked, you'd see the name of next, which was STD5, which was the Perl 5 standard grammar implemented on top of the Perl 6 grammar engine. What does this mean? This means that potentially we could write an NQP backend for Perl 5, which would run alongside Perl 6 with NQP, which would mean a huge backwards compatible or interoperability layer. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily support XS or anything like that, but we'll get there. And this slide's going to completely not work. Hold on, because it's kind of funny. You got to see it. Okay, you're going to have to pretend the transitions happened. Okay, so the question is, what is the answer? And unfortunately, the test gave it away. It's all of the above, okay? All of these efforts, the original Perl 6 effort, my Mo effort, Rennie's Perl 2 or P2 effort, Perlito, gperl, P5i, something that I'm sure one of you has out there that you're not showing anybody because you want to keep it secret, Topaz, shout out to Chip. All of the above, all of these things are important things to help move the community forward, okay? We need to we need to keep Perl 5 and Perl evolving. The two sisters have to grow up together. They were twins after all, right? And you know what? I think Pumpkin Perl is a good thing, okay? That whole Perl 7, all that kind of stuff, it had this whole little debate, and then Matt Trout came out and said, no, Pumpkin Perl, okay? You like my Matt imitation? I do it at parties too, just ask me. So Pumpkin Perl though, what Pumpkin Perl does is what Perl 6 already figured out. Surprise, surprise, they figure everything out before us. Perl 6 figured out that the name is equally as important as the number, if not more. There's Rakudo Perl 6, there's Nietzsche Perl 6, what are the others? There's Pugs Perl 6, there's all these out there. Why can't we have that in Perl 5? Okay, Perl itself is a multi-paradigm programming language, functional programming, object-oriented programming, procedural programming, whatever you want it to do. But it's also a multi-purpose programming language, which means you can use it in a number of different environments. Shell scripting, GUI applications, web applications, big data crunching, whatever, okay? All those things, all those different environments that we're using them in, they have contradictory needs, okay? So why can't we have multiple runtimes? Why can't we have multiple VMs? Sometimes maybe more optimized for one use case or another, okay? And also, why can't we have it run on different platforms too? It's working for the Ruby guys. It's working for the Python guys, okay? It's helping drive their entire languages up. It's not dividing them. It's not doing what Larry was worried about with Perl 4 of the splintering of the community. It's actually keeping the community together, and it's driving the community together. And not all of those VMs that they run on, and not all those different versions of Ruby and Python, they're not all compatible. They have a bit more compatibility than some of the projects that I listed there, but still, it's all helping to drive the language forward. And you know what? This won't be easy, okay? Moving forward and moving a community like us and a language like Perl forward is not going to be easy. Change is never easy. It's not hard. Or change is never easy. It is hard. Okay? And we have to do it with CPAN too. So some of you might be thinking, okay, well, yeah, okay, fine, the core, but I can't hack the core. Well, no, but you can hack CPAN, okay? Go out there, pick a CPAN module. There was a great project for a little while called the Phalanx project, which the goal of it was to let other people come in and help module authors by helping modernize and update their test suites and improve their test suites, improve coverage and stuff like that. It died several years ago, but I think something like that should come back, okay? Something like that should come back for the Perl 5 core test suite. For all the CPAN modules that are out there, we need to get these modules modernized and get them up to date. This is the core that we all program, the foundation that we all program on top of, okay? Because CPAN is our language and Perl is just the syntax, okay? Without it, we wouldn't be the community that we are. So no, I gotta fix this transition, sorry. Sorry, Jeffrey, I know you're like, God, okay. Okay. Perl, maybe just a syntax of CPAN, but Perl is also a community, okay? All of us here, all right? Language aside, it's a community, all right? We've been around for a while. There's some people here who have been, Jeff, how many YAPCs have you been to? 25 YAPCs, okay? All right? And you're not even in the lead. Yeah, exactly. Okay, it's a community. It's a long, storied community. We have a lot to teach the world out there. We've made a lot of the mistakes. We can push. We can help other people learn. Okay, but Perl is a it's a community of like-minded folk. Okay, and we all just love Perl. As long as we're around, Perl will never die. Okay. I can state that for a fact, because as long as we all still keep coming to these conferences and the workshops and YAPC Asia and YAPC EU and YAPC South America and YAPC Russia and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as long as there's people coming to that and doing stuff, Perl will never die, okay, as long as the community's there. But we all need to help push forward. We need to push the language forward, ultimately the community forward, okay? So everybody here today, I want you to think about how you might be able to do this, okay? I don't want to know. I'm going to go get drunk after this, but I want you to think about this, okay? Small things can be done, okay? We as a community have to keep the community alive, okay? We're not dead. I don't care what they say, but we also need to make sure that other people out there know it. And we can shout from the rooftops all we want, but until we have something to show, okay, they're not going to listen to us. So everybody, and I'm trying to leave this on a good note here, everybody here, I want you to think about what you might be able to do, what you might be able to do to drive, to move Perl forward. Perl 5, Perl 6, it doesn't matter. Just let's move this all forward. Let's keep going forward. Let's evolve. Let's make Perl into the language that we all know and love of the future. Okay? And that's it, because the other transition won't work. So let's end it right there.